Hello, and welcome to the Aussie Role Call podcast, our very first episode, and your place for all things Australian TTRPG. We've got an interview for you, we've got news, and it'll all come to you in a fortnightly package brought to you by the Australian Roleplay Community. You'll hear from myself, I'm Kate. You'll also hear from Dan and Stevie. We're all involved in different sides of the Aussie TTRPG space, and we'll be interviewing special guests, as well as talking about all different things TTRPG coming up across the space as well. This week on the Aussie Role Call podcast, we are interviewing the lovely NephthysNile. Nephthys is involved in a lot of different projects across the TTRPG space, a lot of Vampire the Masquerade, as well as being part of the D&D Australia group. We talk a lot about safety tools and tools at the table that you can use just to make sure that TTRPGs are a really safe environment. So we thought it would be a really good way to start off the podcast. So we'll drop into our interview right now. So as we have said, one of the things that we are going to be doing on this podcast is having a conversation with people who are involved in the TTRPG space more broadly. And it feels appropriate to have a conversation with someone who is not only involved in the very organisation that brings our dulcet tones to your ears, but also involved quite heavily in a whole wealth of other things. So I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself because depending on how you would like to be known on the internet and to the listener, it's not up to me to decide.
I am NephthysNile. What don't I do? What don't I do? I am the Vice President for the Australian Roleplay Community. I am the President for D&D Australia. I am the Secondary Storyteller and cast member for Red Centre by Night. I am co-production manager, storyteller, cast member, and general kicker for an international studio, Icarin Inc. I am a cast member for Fallout Australia, It Fell Out Back for Meeples and Dragons, and, a couple of other little bits and pieces here and there, like writing stories, running convention games, being a general nuisance on the internet.
So you're incredibly available and have lots of free time and never busy at all.
There's 24 usable hours in every day.
And some percentage of them should be used for sleep. Whether they are is a different question. Something like that?
Allegedly.
Yeah. You do a lot in the TTRPG space. Where did you start? How did you start by getting involved in all of this many layers of chaos in many different fields?
Many moons ago, in the depths of time, I was a child.
No,
and
really?
I know, strange but true. I know.
I always thought you were just an eldritch being who's just appeared.
Well, look, everyone has an origin story, okay?
Even an eldritch being has an origin story.
Even eldritch beings have origin stories, yes. And I was always telling stories, always writing stories down. I actually started primary school a year early, and when I moved over to Western Australia, they wanted to push me back, and I managed to remain in my school year because I gave them a short story that I had written that was in year 2 that was like 90 pages handwritten or something like that. Yeah, so I've always been telling stories. Insofar as gaming and stories is concerned, I joined, more harassed the D&D and Magic the Gathering groups at my local high school and went, there are no girls here. I'm going to play. I'm just going to sit here until you get annoyed with me and invite me to play. And they did eventually. Started running some D&D games because they got sick of my shenanigans, I think, as a player. And then from there, I grew up, became an adult, shock horror. I still dispute that fact. And actually bumped into some LARPers in the city one day and went, I'm sorry, what? You can play dress-ups and play games? Okay, I need in on this action. The rest, as they say, is history. I started getting into, I guess, my niche area, being Vampire the Masquerade and D&D, through the Neverwinter Nights video games and the Baldur's Gate video games and Redemption and Bloodlines games for Vampire the Masquerade. And then went, oh, it's not just a LARP thing. You can do this at a table and you don't have to play dress-ups. Well, I'm a parent now. This is infinitely more up my alley. Thank you very much. Thus endeth the tale.
Well, thus beginneth the tale, as the tale does not yet have an end, as it continues.
Well, I haven't written it yet.
You haven't written it yet. Yeah, it's true. The story goes on.
I haven't written it yet.
So obviously you have gotten yourself involved in the Australian Roleplay Community and in the D&D Australia parts of all of this, as well as being a storyteller. What I don't want to say dragged you kicking and screaming into those sort of more community-driven parts of it, because we all crave community if we're TTRPG people, really. That's what we do. We all get around tables and tell stories. But what brought you into that side of it, and what do you love about those communities, respectively?
Dungeons & Dragons Australia was my first community for gaming, and I literally did get dragged kicking and screaming to it. The admin at the time I was working with, we realized, oh, hey, you like this stuff too. Cool. And then he went, hey, I want a break. Do you want to take over? And I'm like, I used to be a social media manager. Sure. How hard can it be? And then I was thrust into the world of Dungeons and Dragons Online and community management for a bunch of people who all had very differing opinions. And it was kind of a baptism of fire. And then I went, oh, hang on, I'm actually vaguely okay at this. Cool. I can see where this group needs to go. I'm just going to start doing stuff. And we grew and grew and grew. And then we did some more stuff. And then we started going to events. And then we did some more stuff. And eventually John from the Australian Roleplay Community was like, hey, you're a person who gets stuff done. And I said, hey, yes, I am. And he went, hey, we'd like you to help us get stuff done. And I went, oh, God, what have I done?
You got too competent at doing things.
I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, no, that's fair. What advice would you give to people who do want to get involved in stuff like the D&D Australia group and or ARC, who maybe are sitting on the fringes going, I don't know, can I just barely TTRPG. Can I get involved in this stuff?
Well, you can only get started by starting. You can only do by doing. And if you find out that it's not for you, there is absolutely no shame in backing out and going and finding what does float your boat. Honestly, Australian TTRPG people are, for the most part, lovely, amazing, wonderful, welcoming people. Obviously, with any community, you've got your outliers, but they tend to get pointed out pretty quickly, and the rest of your community will generally protect you and support you. Just freaking do it. Just do it.
Just freaking extra go. Just do it. All right. Well,
just friggin' give it a go.
Do it, mate. Yes. All right. Well, you've been playing for a while. Have you got a favorite gaming related memory? Be that tabletop, be that D&D specifically, Vampire specifically, some combination of the above?
I think my favorite ever moment is when I was running a game at I think it was Conquest, and I had a table of all friends who had never done any TTRPGs before, ever. And they just showed up at Conquest, as one does. Let's go to a gaming convention for fun. They sat at my table and were very, very out loud and proud about it. We've never done TTRPGs. We don't even know what any of this is. And so I did my usual, cool, we're going to learn as we go. We'll make the story up. You tell me what you want to achieve. I'll figure out if there's a rule. And if there isn't, we'll make one up. It's fine. These guys were so unhinged. It was fantastic. Honestly, I do cater for new players. It's kind of my jam because I love introducing people to a potentially new hobby and seeing them getting carried away in the hour and a half to 3 hours that I've got them for, and then they go away and buy their first set of dice. That is such a delicious moment. But these guys were something else. They were playing vampires. Obviously, that's kind of my thing. And they were like, they started off being very gentle and like, can we do this? And I'm like, hell yeah, you can do that. You can always give it a go. Let's see how it goes. A couple of good dice rolls down the way, and they were all like, no, I'm just going to do it. And just watching them blossom and leaning into the actual role play of it was so good. And then they were bouncing off each other and coming up with combo moves. And it was just such a, oh my God, they're growing up so fast kind of a moment. I think my unbeating undead heart grew 3 sizes that day. And it's that kind of a moment that I look back on when I'm like, wow, I really am doing a lot. I'm burning out. I think I need a break. But there might be other groups out there that need me, I want to be their Obi-Wan.
I mean, Yeah, I think there's a lot of DMs, GMs, storytellers who can attest to that feeling of, but they did it all by themselves. They're all grown-up little TTRPG
You're
players
doing
now.
it.
You're doing it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, there is definitely something magical about introducing new people to the hobby for them to go on and become absolutely obsessed. It's very special.
It really is.
Do you know if they kept playing?
Oh, yes, they did. Yeah, they. So I saw them last conquest. Actually, they didn't join my table, but they were wandering around and they came up and they were like, "Hey, we started our own group. We're not playing Vampire, but we're playing. Oh gosh, what was it? I think they were doing Call of Cthulhu." So they went with the horror theme and ran with it, and I was so proud.
We've talked a bit about what you have done. We've talked a bit about the fact that you do too much. What are you doing at the moment? What are you working towards? Are you, planning to overthrow the known universe by introducing one new player to a TTRPG at a time?
Oh my God, don't give away my plans. So at the moment, I am working on a final set of, we're calling them epilogues, for Red Centre by Night as our quote-unquote third season, just to round out the story. We hope to get those out by the end of this year. I'm also going to be bringing Blood of My Blood, which is my latest one-shot ? That can also be played as a 3-shot. Vampire the Masquerade story. I'm taking that to PAX again later on in the year, and we'll be doing it probably around Christmas time as a super special sneaky thing, so watch this space. I am also doing a couple of sneaky projects. Be on the airwaves and on your Twitch screens with a couple of sneaky groups. Can't say too much about that, but suffice to say, you will get sick of my face. Absolutely sick of my face. There is a lot happening this year. And I am, touch wood, knock on wood, knock on like all the rabbit's feet, all the things, I am hoping to have my first purchasable story up on the Storyteller's Vault before the end of the year, so people can buy my shenanigans and run it at their own tables.
That is very exciting. What can you tell us about, without giving too much away, obviously, what can you tell us about Blood of My Blood?
Okay, without giving too much away, you and your friends have been sired or created by a bunch of other vampires, strangely enough. You wake up one evening, they go missing, and the sheriff of the city, who is another vampire, knocks on your door and says, "Yo, what's up? Go find out what happened with your Mars and Pars." And supernatural shenanigans abound. It's a lot of fun. It's really what the players make of it. And it's either a murder mystery, a mystery, or a comedy, depending on how they approach the story.
It tends to be that way with anything that's mystery.
Pretty much. Yeah. Do you Scooby Gang it, or are you going the supernatural route? Like, which one is it?
Sometimes it's a blend of both.
Absolutely.
No, that sounds fantastic. And can you give us any more information about what you're hoping to publish towards the end of this year?
Sure. So I'm hoping to get Blood of My Blood up as a PDF downloadable. And I've also got 2 other stories that I'm hoping to get up as well that serve as, well, all of my stories serve as either standalone one-shots or short chronicles, or can be inserted into longer games. And I'm hoping to have them individually and then potentially get them as an omnibus with a couple of other things that are waiting in the wings.
Very exciting. So
Yeah.
I think this brings me to a question that perhaps we should have asked a little bit earlier, but what is it about Vampire the Masquerade that you absolutely love? Considering you play so much of it, you write so much of it, you storytell so much of it, what is it about this system that just has its hooks in you?
I'm a tragic elder goth who is also a frustrated actor. I guess genuinely, I love the fact that it is declared as personal horror. So a lot of your Call of Cthulhu's and other horror type stories are very cosmic scale, or something's after you and it's horrible and you don't want to get it. Whereas Vampire the Masquerade and really everything within the world of darkness as a whole, as an environment, it's more about what is horrific to you personally and entertaining, inviting those ideas in to try them on. Whereas your other role-playing games, you can explore self, you can explore identity. I know that a bunch of D&D and Pathfinder players really lean into that sort of idea of going and exploring yourself. Vampire the Masquerade is, where are the dark corners of my psyche and what can I do to go and play with them? And that's kind of fun in a safe, sane, and consensual way most of the time.
I love the most of the time on the end of that.
Well, sometimes it's not sane. Sometimes it's a little bit icky sticky.
As long as it's still consensual.
Oh, 100%.
That's the important thing.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So you talk about safe and consensual, especially in games that play in your psyche. What kinds of safety tools are you an advocate for? What do you use? What's your general perspective on safety in a TTRPG setting?
Sure, that's a really good question. I am a huge advocate of the X card because it's simple. People who aren't familiar with TTRPGs or safety tools in general can understand the concept pretty quickly, and it's great for in-person events, conventions, tabletop, home games, whatever. I am also a huge proponent of session zeros and consent and safety lines and veils. In fact, I probably annoy a lot of my players who I do longer games with just the extent of topics I ask for coverage in before we even get to a session zero. I ask for things like lifestyle issues, real world issues, social sorts of cultural issues, go into some pretty horrible detail, but I'd much rather know up front, are you okay with it? Would you rather we close the door on it if it does come up in a story, or are you like, no, this cannot happen, or yes, this can happen, but maybe not to my character, which I find is another option that's kind of missing from a lot of safety tool consent lists out there. And when I'm running a chronicle, I will be, again, before the session zero, but after that consent list, I'll have one-on-ones with my players where we go through, what's your character concept? What are you thinking? Okay, well, from my perspective as a storyteller, this is where we're going with the world. Are you okay with those sorts of ideas? Because there's no point in running a story for a bunch of people if not everyone's on board. And obviously, you don't give away all the secrets because you still want to poke and prod at them just a little bit, but you want them to know that if they've got a line, you're going to walk right up to that line potentially, but you absolutely will not cross it. And further to that, they always have the option of going, no, we're pulling the line back closer. I'm not comfortable with where we are right now. Here's where the new line is. And I think having those ongoing conversations is super important because, we're people, we're flexible, and we are constantly changing. We don't know where we're going to be mentally on any given day, or emotionally even. Or we might have just had a really terrible week at work and it's Saturday and yay, we're looking forward to our game. And then suddenly, oh God, no, I am not all right with this. You need to be able to communicate that kind of effectively, but also as a storyteller or a DM or a GM, you need to be able to pick up on that and go, okay, so we're going to have a shopping episode today because everyone's in a bit of a crap place. So I do a lot of sort of shorter campaigns and doing a check-in after every episode. And then again at the end, it sounds like a lot, but it's not okay to just go, hey, are you guys all right if we do this sort of thing in the lead up to? You've got to check that everyone's okay afterwards. Otherwise, they're going to walk away potentially going, well, that was fun except for that bit. And then that's all they're going to focus on. And then it's not a fun thing anymore. They're going to look at it and go, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. And I don't want anyone to come away from any of my games going, I wish I hadn't done that, ever. I've failed as a storyteller if that's the case.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely need to steal the putting in your consent checklist. I don't want this to happen to my character, but I'm okay with it happening in game because the current form that I have for players doesn't include that, and I think that it would be much better if it did, because I know that there are some topics that I think people are okay seeing in the world, but aren't okay happening to them personally. So that is something that I'm definitely taking away.
I am an example of that because there is something on my consent checklists that is a literal real-world phobia, that I'm okay with these things existing in the world, but you bring them near my character and I will absolutely kick off because, like, no, I want to feel safe at this table and this space, and it's not fair that I have... But, you know, there are situations where those things need to exist in the world because they do, and that's fine. Just keep them the heck away from me and probably avoid the hyper descriptive on them as well. But, like, they can be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you use the traffic light system, obviously you've got your red for no, this can't happen. Yellow, I'm okay, but can we close the door on it? Green, totally all right. And then I tend to use teal for the yes, I'm okay with it, just not around me or not to my character, because it's something very different and it kind of provokes oh, hang on, what is that? And makes people stop and think as they're checking stuff off because, you know, we're all time poor. You can get into a bit of I've just got to get this done. But something that...
Just to clarify for listeners, like using the traffic light system, you're saying that when you're sending out, say, like these surveys or asking these questions beforehand, you'll have for each one of these particular topics or issues or potential phobias, you'll have, you know, red for no.
Yellow for yes, but not explicitly. Can we close the door on it? Can we fade to black? Can we... it can be mentioned but not necessarily explicitly described.
Okay. And green for totally go for it. And you add in an extra fourth colour, which is teal.
Yeah, because it stands out. I have just become aware that it is probably not great for people who have red-green colour blindness, so I may adapt this. I just had a brain flash moment. But, you know, it's something that's there that provokes oh, hang on, I haven't thought about that. How do I actually feel about this thing? And so, yeah, when I collate all of my players' lines and veils to that end, if something is a no for anybody, it does not have a place at my table. And if something is a teal for somebody, then it is a teal specifically for them. And I make a very clear note of that and communicate that in the session 0. These are the things that will not take place at this table. If anyone does it, we will halt play and I will have a word with the person who is affected or people who are affected, and then we'll have a word with the people who have brought it up. Because, you know, sometimes we get into the moment and we forget and we do cross those lines. It's part of being human that we screw up. It's how you deal with it and make sure that everyone's okay afterwards. That is what you can do to mitigate risk and trouble and strife.
Yeah, it's a game after all, and we all want to walk away having had a good time, regardless of what that looks like. Because it could look like that you've had your absolute pants scared off of you and you're generally like, oh, God. But that could be fun. That could be the fun and the game and the everything, provided that's what you're looking for.
Absolutely. So long as everyone consents to having that kind of a game, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. To quote a friend, consent is sexy and necessary. Which is really the important part of all of it. Well, we are rapidly running short on time, and half an hour is never long enough to talk to anybody. Before I drop us into our fast five, our rapid fire final questions, arguably the most important questions of the entire discussion, is there anything else you want to plug, talk about, anything that we feel like we've glossed over that you're like, no, I wanted to say this?
I want to say, have fun, play games, jump in the deep end and swim like crazy. If you're new to the hobby, have fun with it. Do one-shots of every system you can get your hands on. Do it, because you never know what pearls are hidden in the dross of TTRPGs, and everyone's pearl is going to be different.
It's so true.
That is so true.
Fast five. We've got 5 questions. We ask them of every single person. Let's do it. Best gaming table snack?
Trail mix.
Favorite dice? Either size or set or both?
Liquid core D10s I have to every time.
That's the vampire player right there.
Yeah.
It's got to have a liquid center and it's got to be a D10.
Yep.
I feel like I know the answer to this, but favorite game to introduce new players to?
Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition because it's super simple.
Tabletop must-have, other than dice, obviously.
Is there anything else? My Rocketbook notebook, because I can write on it and erase it and reuse it and take notes and transfer it to files on my computer and index it.
Nice.
Wow, super organized too.
Yeah. I mean, with the number of things you've got going on, that makes sense.
I have to be organized. There is no substitute.
Last one. If you could have a companion, minion, animal, robot, like a familiar in D&D 5e or similar, what would it be?
Do we really need to guess? It's a swarm of bats every time.
Amazing.
No surprises. I don't think any of us were surprised by any of that.
No.
All right. Well, we will wrap momentarily, but where can people find you on the wild, wild internet or in the wild, wild world if they want to get in touch, talk more vampire or any of the other things that we've talked about in the last half an hour or so?
Oh, God, I'm everywhere. I'm a social media fanatic. You can find me pretty much everywhere as NephthysNile, NephthysNile, as it says on the tin. You can find me at Dungeons & Dragons Australia on Facebook and Discord and pretty much everywhere else. I am also on Ichor and Ink and Red Centre by Night and Fallout It Fell Out Back for Meeples and Dragons. And soon a bunch of other places.
So keep an eye on the social media for all of the places that one might find you.
All everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
World domination coming to a live play near you.
Well, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for talking safety tools, talking vampire, and just generally sitting back, having a chat and talking tabletop.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Aussie Roll Call News Roundup, a curated selection of news and events from the Australian TTRPG scene. Our first piece of news comes from the world of crowdfunding. Fragged Empire, which is made here in Australia by Wade Dyer, has launched its latest crowdfunding campaign. This campaign is for Ragtag. Now, Ragtag is a fresh, new way to enjoy the Fragged Empire RPG. For those of you who don't know, Fragged Empire is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi setting where you and your people are just now returning to space following a century of hiding during the aftermath of a galactic war. It's very fun. I have had the chance to play it at a couple of different cons and highly recommend checking it out. This brand new way of playing Fragged Empire is called Ragtag, and it is offering an alternative rules-light, punchy and dramatic rule system. So if you are a fan of things like OSR, Mothership, Morkborg, and other such games of that ilk, you're probably going to enjoy this particular project. Now, it is currently still live on BackerKit, and if you listen to this episode when it is released, the crowdfunding campaign will end on September 7th, 2024, 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. The link for that will, of course, be in the show notes. Now let's turn to events. So, the first event that I want to highlight is going to be happening on the 31st of August, so if you're listening to this episode when it goes live, there is still time. This is Capricon. Capricon's being held at the Rockhampton Showgrounds on Saturday the 31st of August. It is everything to do with pop culture, but they do have a tabletop gaming section, and it does look like they will be offering TTRPGs as part of that. So as with everything, the links will be in the show notes, or you can just head to capriconrockhampton.com.au. What is happening at ARC? Well, we've got a lot of great things planned for Melbourne International Games Week, which is happening in October. In particular, we have Games Week at the Table, which is a live stream that will be taking place on Sunday the 6th of October. That will feature actual plays of Australian-made TTRPGs, including the wonderful RPG Night by Mark Barron and Dark Vigil by Nicole Renner.
In addition to the live plays, there is so much more amazing content that is going to be part of Games Week at the Table, including a panel for artists, a design along workshop, and advice on publishing and marketing TTRPGs. I will have more information about the cast and the guests and all of that wonderful detail a bit closer to the date. For PAX Australia 2024, ARC is hosting 44 different games, and I believe 80% of those are independent TTRPGs, so there is a huge amount to choose from over the PAX weekend. PAX Australia will be running this year from the 11th of October to the 13th of October. That is all the news that I had for this episode, and we will see you in the next one.
This podcast is produced in affiliation with the Australian Roleplay Community. Your hosts have been Kate O'Sullivan, Dan Machuca, and Stevie Schaefer. Cover art by Helen Graham of Dewey Studios. Title music is Sweet Sunday Groove by Slailkey. Production by Stevie Schaefer.